Disconnect the negative side of the battery. It's a 10mm wrench or socket. We'll just take that, loosen that terminal end right up, and make sure it sits aside and doesn't ground back out. Flathead screwdriver. I'm just going to turn these things a quarter turn. And you've got to take the front off here, and then this center one here. And it's just little plastic tabs that it's attached to. So we'll pull them up. And then you can set them aside. Let's take off the drive belt, the alternator AC one first. So 14mm wrench on the tensioner bolt, and we're going to pull up. So you're going to go counterclockwise, and then you can access the belt, slide it right off, and then just bring that tensioner back down. So we're going to loosen up the power steering belt first. It's a 12mm socket. I just want to take the tension off it first, so that's the back bolt. See that? We'll loosen that up. And the adjuster part is right here, and that's 12mm also. I already pre-sprayed it, so. Okay, now we can take the belt off. Perfect. And we'll pull that out. So let's lift the vehicle up. 19mm socket, we're going to remove the passenger side tire. Fender shield in here. So now we're going to remove this Phillips plastic tab and a pinch pin up here. So with a pair of body tool pliers, we're going to pull this push pin out, and let's see what we got left for movement. And that one's coming down. We got one right here, and it looks like another one right here. Don't have to remove the whole shield, just enough to bend it and get it out of your way. Now our vehicle's raised up. We have access to the fender well. I'm just going to remove the drive belt that we already loosened up from the top. Take it right off the AC compressor and bring that out. So before I dismount the engine mount or the harmonic balancer, we're going to line up the timing mark. So crank harmonic balancer is going to get lined up with the timing cover. That's a 19mm socket on that harmonic balancer, and I'm going to turn it clockwise. You can feel the compression. See the 3 lines, and then that one line that's further from all of them. That's the one that we're going to line up. About there. Now I'm going to check my cam marks and make sure they're lined up. I've got 2 visual ports in each cover. So right here, I can see the lines. The back one, not so easy, but I'm happy with that. I can always turn it before I take the belt off. So now we're going to take the harmonic balancer off. This is what they call a specialty tool for damper for Honda or Acuras. So it fits right in that lovely little notch like that. And you're going to have the pressure on it while you take a 19mm socket and an air gun preferably. And we're going to loosen that, take that bolt right out. Now we can just take our 2 hands, hold onto the harmonic balancer and just slide it forward. A little wiggling, and it'll come right off. And there we go. So quick note, make sure that keyway stays in there and do not move it, and make sure it doesn't fall out. And if you lose it, you gotta get a new one. Because if that's not there, this car will spin and you'll hit the valves. Interference engine, no good. So that's the key to the keyway. So now to replace the harmonic balancer, you're gonna line that keyway up, just like that. Push it on evenly all the way around. You'll feel it bottom right out. And you're gonna take your crank bolt, slide it by hand. Don't be afraid to use a rubber mallet. You know what's on there good. Just tap it equally on both sides. It'll bottom out. And then you can snug it down with your hand. Centering tool and a torque wrench, 19 millimeter. We have to torque this thing up to 181 foot-pounds. This is really important not to use a air gun because you could crack the crank. It's hollow where the bolt is. I'm going to put the power steering belt around the harmonic balancer, and that goes on the inner edge. Make sure it's seated. There we go. And put the power steering belt on the power steering pulley. It's really important to make sure it's all seated correctly. There we go. Now to put tension on that, we're going to tighten up that tensioner nut right there. That's a 12 millimeter. So now I'm going to put some tension on it. I'm not going to over tighten it because I want to snug up the mounting bolt on the back here, and the same with the nut on the top. They're all 12 millimeter all the way around. So let's just give it a little snug. Keeps it centered also. And then that nut is right down there. See it? Once I have these just touching and snug, then I'll really get that adjustment where I want it, so I know that my pump isn't at an angle wobbling around. All right, let's see where we're at with the belt. Yeah, we definitely need to tighten that some more. Ideally, for a flat belt or even a V-belt, the best way to know the adjustment is to see a quarter of a turn both ways with that belt. You don't want a full half, like I'm forcing that. And don't forget, once you tighten the mounting bolts, it will tighten up some more. That's perfect. Too tight, we'll wear that pump out. So there is torque for this mounting bolt and the nut, and it's 17 foot-pounds. So let's do it. Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to put the alternator AC belt on. So you're going to bring it down, fish it down below, and I'm going to go down there and put it on the AC pump and the harmonic balancer. So bring it around under the AC and the harmonic balancer. It looks good. Let's go up to the top. Nice long ratchet or serpentine belt tool. I think that is a 14 millimeter. Let's double check. Yeah. So we're going to pull it like that. But what we need to do is actually put the belt around. Now it's around the AC and the harmonic balancer. We'll take it off the alternator, bring it down around the tensioner. So you need to get your tool on there and then put pressure on it. There we go. So it looks good everywhere else. Now we're going to put our 14 millimeter wrench on there. And push it towards the windshield, the firewall. Get as much as you can out of it. Bring it around the alternator. Let it back. Now before you do anything, double check your mounting on all pulleys. Make sure it all sits flush in the groove. Now we can put our little plastic engine covers back on. line these plastic tabs up to the little rubber boots. And the same with the front. You've got the locks right here. Line those up. Push them in. That's going to be a flat-headed screwdriver. Give the turn quarter turn or half turn. Half turn. Now we can bring up our little fender skirt underneath here. This up in the fender well. With that in, it's so much easier to guide the bottom ones in. So now we can put our tire back on. I just snug them up because I'm going to torque them to the factory spec. Wheel torque for this car is 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern. Now we're ready to hook up the battery and start this up. Make sure it's nice and snug. 10mm wrench. Perfect. Don't forget to fill your overflow. Make sure it's filled to the low side line, and that way while you run this and it burps through the system, it'll have some to vacuum in if it needs to.